turn off their mobile phones and remind people that this is going to be recorded and will be available for public consumption if they wish to listen to us in that sort of detail. Sederunt, apologies.
Good morning, everyone. We have 7 members present. I have an apology from Councillor Prentice. Councillor McCutcheon, Councillor Wiper and Councillor Ian Crothers are not present but may be along in a moment.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? None. Thanks. The minute of the meeting of the 26th of May. Can we agree those minutes? Agreed. Okay, thank you. We'll go on to item 4 then, which is the Revenue Budget Outturn Report 2014-15. You note that this is the Outturn Monitoring Report for the financial year 2014-15, and DGFirst have achieved an underspend of just under £47,000, which has been transferred to the Department Service Reserves. The key issues are discussed at paragraphs 3.3 to 3.12, and members had previously asked for more detail on overtime, and this is in paragraph 3.13 in Appendix 2. Overall agreed savings targets were met. See paragraph 3.14 in Appendix 3 for that. Have you got anything to add to that, Bill?
No.
Members' questions? Ivor?
Chair, it's with regard to the, was it 559,000 additional budget for the waste in Wigtonshire? Is that included in the figures and then the recharge is in there, or is that additional that may cause us an issue in future years?
Bill?
It's included in the figures shown.
Craig?
Thank you, Chair. 3.4, in relation to the overspend on the waste collection service, I'm sure other members have points on this, but obviously it's a concern to us as a committee, because this has been an ongoing budget pressure over the past few years. And I'm just wondering if the Director can give us any sort of indication as how he sees this going forward. Is this going to be a continuous budget pressure in that particular aspect, or is there a way that we can mitigate this by other methods that the Director can look at? Because I think it's a real concern. It's been going on for 3 years now. It's obviously looking to continue, and we need to try and get a handle on this and try and, if not reduce it, but get rid of the budget pressure altogether, but certainly reduce it from actions that we have to take.
Bill?
Thank you, Chair. I think there are 2 things in response to that, Councillor Peacock. First of all, the major part of the budget pressure is to do with the zero waste collection rollout. There is another budget pressure within there, which is the reduction of commercial customers, and we're actively looking at promoting the service there. As to the zero waste issues, there is a considerable review going on at the moment, which is due to be reported to EEI committee later this year.
Alistair, then Stephen.
Thank you, Chair, and forgive me if the question seems a bit naive, but I'm new to this committee. I was appointed for the last committee, but I was unable to attend because I'm in Glasgow. It's regarding 3.7 and the underspend on school meals. I note the costs of the introduction of free meals was £24,000 higher than forecast in the November monitoring, but was still 20,000 less than the funding provided. Where did that funding come from? Was that? Thank you.
That's funding provided by the Scottish Government.
Stephen?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's on the back of Councillor Peacock's comment about the commercial service. I think one of the concerns is commercial service, your model would be to actually make money. And I think we've talked about this before in terms of what a break-even point might be for a trading service in terms of waste collection. But I think what concerns me is the £55,000 less because it seems to indicate, you know, are we making the right assumptions in terms of how we predict what kind of income we're going to get from a commercial service? And if we're that far out, you know, is there an issue with the underlying assumptions that we are taking forward in terms of a business plan? So maybe if you could, I know that's getting picked up in another forum sort of thing, but on that particular issue, I think it's just that how accurate are we with our own business assumptions?
Bill?
That's quite a difficult question to answer because obviously we predicted that we would get more income than we actually did. As I said in response to an earlier question, we are looking at marketing the service more actively, and we would hope that that will increase the number of commercial customers and therefore the contribution to the cost of the overall service.
You want to come back on it?
Yeah, it was actually, I was going to ask two questions, and that was the first one just on the back of Councillor Peacock's, but with your indulgence, I've got another one. Just on 3.13 as well, I appreciate the inclusion of the information about overtime, and it certainly helps give us a better understanding of what of where the sort of costs are and why there is an overtime budget. Would it be possible to get a sort of better sense of where the overtime's needed? Because obviously, you know, in terms of 4 areas within the council, geographically, we might get a better sense of where there's pockets of particular need or where that budget's being applied, and then that would give us a more rounded picture of where we could maybe reallocate resources to either reduce or ameliorate against overtime needs.
Can I use it? I mean, on overtime, obviously there'll be certain areas where we need to have a certain level of manning and things like that, and when people are off on the sick, for instance, it's something I don't think you can actually predict, and it's really an operational issue over time, as opposed to a strategic overview of what's actually happening. I think as long as we're actually managing the overtime situation properly, that would be the best way to go forward. But if Bill wants to answer, that's fine.
Certainly, Chair. We can provide a breakdown by area. I'm not sure that it would give you what you're looking for, but certainly I'll undertake to provide you with those figures to see if you can draw any conclusions from it.
Colin and Craig.
Thank you, Chair. It's on the waste collection, zero waste collection, sorry. I would imagine there'll be councils up and down the country that have been doing this for years. I know down south they certainly have. I mean, did we ever look at other councils, even south of the border, for a model to work from? We seem to be, you say, in the middle of a review at the moment. I mean, do we actually know where we're going to try and get the cost of this down? And when it finally gets rolled out in the Stewartry and Nistdale, etc., are these costs going to get through the roof, as they appear to be doing in Wigtonshire?
Well, my understanding is that they benchmarked some areas in Wales, if I remember properly. But Bill, if you want.
And also in Scotland. Sorry, Chair. Yes, we collectively, the council took advice from Zero Waste Scotland, but we also visited a number of authorities. Two that come to mind are Powys in Wales and Stirling Council. There were at least another two, I just can't remember which ones at the moment. So we did look at how other people were working it, and we took advice, as I say, from the specialists in Zero Waste Scotland. I think that some of the assumptions that we were given by those other councils and Zero Waste Scotland have proved not to fit Dumfries and Galloway. As I mentioned earlier, there is a review of the whole of the zero waste collection service with a view to containing the overall costs within the funding available.
Craig and Ivor.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to 3.12, the community safety budget, it's just a point with regards to the income from the fines that we receive from the department. And a real concern that the car parking fines are 67% of the total income that we would receive, whereas the likes of the fly tipping and the dog fouling fines are very, very minimal compared to that. And I would suggest that the fly tipping and the dog fouling are more prevalent issues in the community than car parking issues that we have at this stage. And I'm a bit concerned that we're possibly focusing our attentions on an easy hit as far as the car parking is concerned. And I would like to see that possibly this committee might give a direction to the community safety team that we should be concentrating on the fly tipping and the dog fouling, which is in effect across the whole of the region. And I'm sure every member gets this when they go to their community meetings. Dog fouling, we know it's a problem. We know it's difficult to catch the perpetrators, etc. But I feel that the time would be better spent by the officers rather than going around car parks trying to get an easy hit on somebody that's overstayed by half an hour or whatever. Using that time from the officers to be patrolling around the various communities to try and counter the fly tip and the dog fouling.
Bill?
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Peacock made the point himself that actually parking offences are a static one. They're not targeted. They're found when our community safety officers walk through the car park on their way to other areas. The area tasking committees do focus on both fly tipping and dog fouling. They are much harder to actually enforce because you have to actually find somebody doing it or find evidence, as I think members will remember from a presentation at the last committee on fly tipping, that if we can find evidence of who it was that fly tipped or we catch somebody doing, then we can issue a penalty for it. I don't have the figures here, but I know that in the area committee consideration of community safety performance, they are being advised the rough split of time that's spent on the various activities. And from memory, dog fouling and fly tipping take up the majority of the officers' time. It's not reflected in the number of fixed penalty notices issued. And if members are interested, I can certainly circulate that assessment of the time spent on different community safety issues.
Yeah, I think that would be useful, Bill, if we could just email members of the committee of that time. Ivor?
Chair, it's with regard to the savings trackers in Appendix 3, grounds and public open space maintenance. Outstanding work, it says that the financial impact of exceptional growing season this spring and summer still being assessed. I take it that will be referring to year 14-15 and not 15-16. And what's actually happening with that saving? Has it just been taken out because we changed our mind on it, and therefore where did the additional £200,000 in savings come from?
Bill?
Thank you, Chair. I must apologise to members, but an earlier version of this table has been included rather than the one that referred to the current position. It does indeed refer to last summer. We are still taking that saving, i.e. the budget is some £200,000 less than it was, but we're addressing the saving in a different way. We're spreading our resources in a much more flexible way, and we're dealing with things as they occur rather than rigid grass cutting every fortnight, or as we did last year, not cutting some areas of work. So we're spreading the available resources to do the best that we can across the piece.
Can we come back on that?
Just the fact that this year hasn't been as good a growing season, has that helped?
I was just thinking about the patch of grass in front of my house. Certainly over the last few weeks, there's been a tremendous growth. It's not as bad as it was last year, and that is helping matters.
I hope we're not cutting your grass.
No.
Dennis?
Thanks, Chair. It's 3.8 care and support services underspend, and the fact that staff costs seem to be a large part of that. I mean, while we still have pressure areas in certain parts of the region for care staff, is this a difficulty in getting staff, or what brings us to this? Because I say I know there are certain pressure areas where the care service struggles.
Thank you, Chair. It's a combination of reasons. One is there is a continuing, you're quite correct, there is a continuing difficulty in recruiting care staff. I don't have the detail with me on that, but if if you wish, I can talk to you after the committee.
No, Chair, I think, again, this is, though for this committee, just a serious problem. This is a serious problem. It's maybe something that needs to go back to the social work as an issue, because I don't know how we overcome this one. Again, it's not something we can do, and it's not as if there's no a decent wage being paid for the job. Finding people that actually want to do it, especially in rural areas, is becoming more and more difficult. And I think it's something we need to flag up and look at, because it's only going to get more difficult as time goes on.
I think with the issue of health and social integration and for adult services, there's been a lot of discussion with DGFirst and health and also third sector to see where this can be improved. Bill, do you want to?
Really, to build on what you've just said, Chair, there is a major review of care at home and care homes underway at the moment, which my head of care and facilities management is leading, which is part of the work heading towards health and social care integration. Kate has indicated that she's quite hopeful that that might not be the complete answer, but it will be more of an answer than we've had previously. I understand that that will be reported to the joint board later this year, and again, I'll advise you on that.
Stephen, and then Ivan.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a wee question on the 3.3, the energy costs for street lighting, which were used to partially offset overspends. Could you remind me just again, now this, if I'm understanding correctly, this was part of the wider programme to replace street lighting with LED over a number of years to realise this sort of saving, but is that applied corporately or by department, or why is that included in there?
There is a corporate spend to save project which is replacing lanterns with LEDs and dimmable lanterns. That work is progressing faster than expected, in part from grant assistance, and that's why we've seen a decrease in this year's. Over the course of time, that will come back on model.
Yeah.
So I think what that's helpful, but I think what I was really looking for was, is that applied to, so is it DGFirst that will realise those revenue savings, if you like, or is that shared across different departments?
Because the programme has proceeded faster than we had anticipated, that saving is the difference between the predicted saving and the actual energy cost is an underspend on DGFirst's budget.
Ivor?
Chair, just a sort of general point that we're asking a lot of questions on this, but I think there is a case of we appreciate the fact that the officers have worked hard to maintain the budget at the level they are. So maybe when we come to recommendation, maybe our appreciation from the committee in there might be worthwhile putting in.
Thanks very much. Anybody else? No. Can we go to the recommendations then? Members are asked to note 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3, and as Ivor says, I think 2.4, the appreciation for all the work that officers have done in bringing in the budget saving. Agreed? Okay. Go on to item 5 then, the Trading Operations Outturn report. As with the last report, you should note that this is the Outturn Monitoring Position report for DGFirst Trading Operations for financial year 2014-15. DGFirst Trading Operations have returned an overall small surplus. The key issues are discussed at paragraph 3.3 to 3.8 with the overtime analysis given at appendix 2. Unfortunately, as shown in paragraph 3.5, the road service returned a significant deficit this year. However, the building maintenance and vehicle maintenance services had a tremendous trading year, contributing to the overall trading position of DGFirst. Building services has been working closely with local SMEs to make more work readily available to support the economy of Dumfries and Galloway. Small companies find it increasingly difficult to win major contracts because of the ever-increasing burden of systems and processes such as CDM 2015. The building maintenance service works with these businesses to allow them to price and obtain work as subcontractors, and also DGFirst ensures SMEs are paid quickly. Anything to add?
No, I think the report speaks for itself, but I'm happy to take questions.
Members, Alistair?
Thank you. 3.5, could I be enlightened as to what exactly non-direct costs are in terms of expenditure?
Bill?
I'll actually ask my finance officer to explain that. She has more of the details to her fingertips.
Caroline?
Thank you, Chair. Basically, the non-direct costs are everything that are not plant materials and subcontractors. So in effect, it's the staff costs, which are fixed because we've got the staff employed, the costs of running the depots, the transport that is the fixed element of the transport. So it's those bits that we have that don't change that readily depending on how much work we've got. Obviously, the hired plant, the direct materials and the subcontractors will vary depending on how much work, whereas the other costs are much more fixed. So that's the explanation for it.
Okay. Members, anything else? Ivor?
Chair, this is maybe not answerable, but maybe somebody can. Just wondering, we made a profit of £1,000 and odd pounds from a gross of 2 million. Is it a case that central recharges are, right, we'll leave you with something and then we can bring the rest back in, or are they actually apportioned accordingly? Maybe something an officer doesn't want to answer.
Not at all, Councillor Hislop. The departmental and central recharges are set in advance and spread across all of the services. There is a model which Caroline applies to this. So it's not a case of they took it all away from me and left me a little crumb. It doesn't work that way.
Any others? Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Members are asked to note the trading operation. Sorry, Stephen.
Down before I put my hand up. It's just on the road service. It's in there as a plus 208 surplus, I presume, and it's marked as a deficit.
No, it is a slightly confusing issue that where we return a surplus or in loose terms a profit, that is a negative number, and a positive number is a deficit. It's the accounting system that we use.
Thank you. I think I've remarked in previous committees about the how confusing sometimes the tables might be, and hopefully that's getting addressed so that even a lay member like me can sort of understand it. What it was, again, it's back to this idea of trading and the profitability of trading. Most businesses have to trade and break even in the market to survive. So I think the concern is similar to one in the previous paper to do with waste collection. And if we are not making a profit on our services, then are we making the right assumptions about what we can actually generate? You know, are we running our business well? I think really is the question.
Bill?
Thank you, Chair. It's a good question, and I think that broadly across the other trading services, the assumptions that are made in the charging for work have proved that they make a positive rate of return. Unfortunately, through a number of factors, the model that has been applied to the road service has not been accurate, and there is a large amount of work currently underway to revisit our costing models and to come up with an adequate commercial model for the road service, the roads trading account.
Okay, so we go to the recommendations. I'll be happy with the recommendations. Good. Okay, on to item 6, which is the DGFirst budget. This report provides members with details of the DGFirst budget 2015-16 and the associated activity-based budget, ABB information. On 5th of February 15, full council agreed a 3-year budget covering the period 2015-16 to 2017-18. One of the key early elements of the agreed budget process is the review and agreement by this committee of DGFirst budgets for 2015-16. Work is underway corporately to integrate and improve ABB and business planning information and reporting. And ABB information for DGFirst is contained within Appendix 2. Key budget issues are outlined in paragraphs 3.9 to 311. Is there anything you want to add to that, Bill?
No, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to take questions.
Members? Colin?
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification. On page 20, key issues, bullet point 1, staff costs 18.96 million. But in the previous paper, it had staff costs at 12.6 million. 12.8, sorry. Just a clarification of that small £7 million discrepancy.
If you just give me a moment to match the figures. Caroline will answer.
The answer to that one is actually that the ABB document kind of misses out trading accounts because the central finance seem to consider them slightly different from the revenue budgets because they're fully allocated. So actually the 18.6 million should be compared with the figure in the general fund, the first committee report that you received, which, as you will see, it's appendix 1 of the general fund, and that budget was the adjusted budget was 18.9 million, and that's what you compare. It's another one of these quirks of DGFirst, unfortunately.
In that case, I'll agree with Councillor Peacock. It's very confusing at times.
Members? Ivor, then.
Chair, page 28 of 124, Neighbourhood West collection. Last year actual outturns were 3.6 million. We're looking at budget estimates 3.42. Are we under budgeting for that service? Should we be addressing that?
Bill?
Thank you, Chair. As I mentioned under item 4 of this agenda, we are looking very closely at that, and there is a report due to EEI committee on the overall cost. So these budget estimates may change over time.
Any other member? Craig?
Thank you, Chair. In regard to roads and page, starting off on page 59 and then following through the next few pages there, I wonder if the Director could just explain a wee bit the source, the SIP for rating review, and we're spending £1,692 per kilometre of roads compared with the Scottish average. So we're nearly about half of the Scottish average spend on that, and if we could just have some detail on that. And further on, regard to the benchmarking, when you look at the A, B, C and U class roads, that should be considered for maintenance treatment. Dumfries and Galloway is consistently within the bottom 5 of the country on this, and we're actually, when you look back through the years, we haven't moved on that position at all. And I find it a bit concerning that we're not improving on that situation through the roads, and wonder if the Director would like to comment.
Bill?
Thank you, Chair. As to the first one, the spend per kilometre is a performance indicator which personally irritates me considerably because it is done from the local financial returns and it includes only revenue expenditure. It also includes the spend on winter service operations. Now, this council, because of its position in Scotland spends significantly less on winter than any other council in Scotland, whilst doing roughly the same amount of treatment. So it is a very misleading benchmark. It ignores the £8 to £9 million of capital investment in the roads network. And anecdotally, if you look at other councils and their spend versus their budget, there is at least one council on the basis of these figures that spends twice its budget on the roads. So I would, whilst we put it in because it's a requirement for us to put it in, it's not an indicator that I would put much credence in. As to the road condition, yes, this council is at the bottom of the league table. It has been for a number of years, and that's a function of investment over a number of years. It's also a function of the fact that we have the third largest network in Scotland. It's not something that we can wave a magic wand and it'll suddenly come right. It is clear that the investment coming from the Strategic Roads Programme has made a significant difference to the condition of the major roads, but resources are finite and we haven't been able to arrest the issues on the rest of the network.
If I remember through discussions with Dennis, I think Dennis said that the roads officer about 25, 30 years ago said we need major investments in the roads in this particular area. That investment, of course, over the years hasn't been in there, so we're dealing with a sort of long-term issue here as opposed to anything else. Craig, you want to come back?
Yes, Chair, thank you, and I appreciate that, Bill, for that explanation. But, Chair, it might be helpful to have a note in there then to just to explain that basic fact that because of the length of the kilometre that we have in the area, etc., because just for the basic fact that these are public papers and anybody picking that up might have a concern that we're constantly at the bottom of the league table as far as that's concerned. So just maybe a small explanation note might help when public are looking through the papers.
Thank you. Yes, when these results are published in the performance reports, then additional text is added in to explain the background to this. But it's certainly something we'll make a note of for the review on how we report ABB and performance information.
Ivor?
Chair, it's with regard to the facilities management. Within the other catering outlets, we have
you got a page?
Page 71. DG1's mentioned in there. We know it's closed, and I think in the earlier budget it said it affected our costs or our profitability. Is that taken account of within the other catering outlets budget line? And the other one was public conveniences, staff, no income. Have we stopped charging at the toilets where there were machines for charging? I think Munches Street had was it 20p a pee or whatever it was. And I'm not sure if the White Sands had one as well.
Bill?
The simple answer to the first part of the question is yes. It has been taken account of. And I'll have to get back to you on the public conveniences. As far as I'm aware, we're still charging in those conveniences where there are systems in
Caroline
place.
wants to come in on that
Yes.
one.
Just to confirm that we are still charging 20p per p on those ones that we staff. So I think that must just be a mistake in this because we're most definitely charging.
Colin?
Thank you, Chair. It's just a comment that the head of service made about performance indicators and not giving a lot of credence to them. Is there any way or any move to change these? Because if they're not really needed or given the right information, surely, I mean, is there any point of having them in there, basically?
Bill?
Thank you, Chair. I did say that was a personal comment about the benchmarking indicators rather than the performance indicators. There is a national project with the Scottish Local Government Benchmarking Framework to look at the cost, quality and customer indicators for the road service, because I am not alone in those who have to report this in finding that the figures are not that useful. So there is work underway nationally to look at improving the way performance is reported.
I thought you were going to say you were not the only one with personal thoughts here on that particular thing.
I'm not.
Craig?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point before you sum up. Just to say really that the way the report is set out and the detail and that is put into that and the figures, I think, is very, very helpful. It's nice and clear and understandable, and all the percentages and everything are there, and the information that's contained in the report as it's set out is very, very helpful.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. It's just actually back to the staff costs, the 18.96 and the 12.8 million in the trading budget from the previous paper. Just with my sort of naive head, I'm looking at that thinking that's 12.8 million costs on staff to generate £9 million of external income, given that most of the trading income is effectively recharges from capital projects or revenue budgets from within the council. If I understand 3.9 correctly. So I'm just, just sort of looking at that sort of naively, as I say. Could you maybe sort of help me out there?
Bill, can you help him out?
I'm tempted flippantly to say I wish, but seriously, no. If I can remind members of the comment that my finance officer mentioned earlier, there are two elements to the budget. There's the trading operations and there's the revenue funded. So the income that is referred to in this report is the revenue income. We generate income through our funded services. I think possibly the best example of that is the £2.5 million income that is generated by the school meal service, which is a funded service, but the 11 or 12,000 meals a day at £1.70 and £1.80 add up to a significant portion of that. So there is income that is generated by the funded services, and there is income that's generated by the trading services. This is a revenue budget report, and it only refers to those generated by the funded services.
Stephen?
Thank you for that. And I do sort of have a grasp of that really, but I think I'm sort of trying to read this as a member of the public, because obviously our interest has been a sort of open and transparent and accountable, sort of friendly, customer-facing council. So I'm just sort of thinking these are public documents. This is recorded. We have the benefit of, sort of clear and lucid explanations for something that isn't always presented in a way that's readily sort of understandable to anybody who'd want to sort of understand how the council works. And I think that's really the kind of point I'm getting at. But obviously we are privileged because we will get the benefit of your direct explanation. Thank you.
Bill?
It is a long-running issue, and I think it's an issue that I've had with every chair and vice chair I've served with. But the accounting conventions that we are required to follow do ask us to split the revenue-funded services and the trading operations apart, and that's how we report it.
Can go to the recommendations in. Members are asked to review and agree the DGFirst service budget 2015-16 as detailed in Appendix 2. And 2.2, note that the work is being progressed to integrate activity-based budget information and business planning information, thus removing the need for separate documents and providing an improved understanding of the unit cost of producing a service and sophisticated resource profiling. Perhaps that recommendation may help the situation. Okay. Going to item 7 then, the Director's end of year assessment of business plan performance. DGFirst 2014-15. This relates to the assessment of progress on delivery of 2012-15 business plan and provides detailed information on the summary on the performance of DGFirst. Appendix 2 shows that the department has made good progress with its health and safety action plan, and I would hope that this is seen as a very positive basis with the majority of our targets on track and maintaining a positive trend. Anything to add to it, Bill?
I'd just like to comment on two successes. We, as a department, have been very proactive in adopting the Public Services Improvement Framework, often known as PSIF, and we've successfully completed 6 reviews so far. All have been presented to a challenge panel chaired by the Chief Executive, and each service has derived a great deal of benefit from those reviews. It's produced significant changes in a number of our services. The other good news story, I think, is in our performance and development reviews. There are 1,900 posts in the department, and we have completed over 96% of the possible PDRs, which I think is a major success story for us. Thank you, Chair.
I would agree with that specific issue of having a PVR for 96% when we see other departments not getting over 30% in some of the cases. And I think it's important that people understand within the council where they actually fit within the council business, and part of that PVR is there. So members open for any questions. Colin?
Thank you, Chair. It's on the end of year exception report, days lost through sickness, non-teacher, etc. I realise it says in here that you've increased confidence that you're capturing more absences, etc. But I vaguely seem to remember 3 years ago when I joined this committee that figure was down about 11%, and we're now almost at 16%. I mean, are we saying that there's been no rise, it's just it wasn't being captured properly, or is there a significant rise in absences?
Bill?
It's really a combination of both of those. Our systems have got much better about actually recording the accurate data. Whilst the overall, I would like to add to that, sorry, in addition to answering your question, that percentage is an overall percentage, and there are services within the department that are significantly less than that. Unfortunately, that also means there are services which are significantly higher than that. So there are examples of good practice within the department. Support services has an absence rate of 3.9%, which is really quite good. The road service was at 4.4%, but that's dropped now to 4%. And neighbourhood services, whilst having an overall absence rate of 7%, 2 out of the 4 areas are under 4%. So there are good news stories in here as well as the overall bad news story.
I remember. Craig?
Thank you, Chair. Just regarding the ICT development and integration, obviously we have a red warning there. I appreciate the exception report on the back, and it's just an updated position. It states that it should be operational in July 15. I'm just, if the director has an update on that as to whether it will be or is it going to be further delayed.
Bill?
It went live during June, and I can't remember which day. It was a Monday. I can't remember the date, but it has gone live and is proving reasonably successful. So it's there.
Ivor?
Chair, it's on the health and safety work that we're doing. There's a couple there where management actions are required. One's RIDOR, reportable incidents, report to HSE within legal timescales. Another one's a review of the department one. What are we planning to do, and are we far away from actually being compliant in those? And just one other thing on this, from being at 2 or 3 services, this is one of the better health and safety reports where there's fewer red or yellow or amber ones.
Bill?
Thank you for that, Councillor Hislop. Taking the RIDOR one, which is actually, there were 2 incidents where we failed to make the reporting timescales. One of those was an incident where it turned into a riddle after the event. Unfortunately, there was an accident on our roads. The guy was struck by a road roller. The incident was reported, but it was several days later that he actually had to take the absence. His muscles had stiffened up. The other one was an inability that somebody didn't realise that they had to do something, so it wasn't reported. But I am assured that my health and safety working group have stressed the need to report all of these within time, so I'm confident that that one is well under control. We were slower than expected in carrying out the review of our health and safety plan, but that is now back on track, so I'm confident that that will not reappear.
Alistair and Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. My inquiry is specifically regarding the EMES, which is noted on page 103 and then in more detail on page 119. And I can see that we're moving in the right direction in terms of targets. We know the response times, it's three working days for one normally, and then a longer period for those that require more detailed response. I have my own particular issues regarding EMES. I feel it's a Procrustean solution for those of you familiar with Greek myths, but maybe we should keep off Greece at the moment. But I feel that I just wanted to know what is this where do these figures come from? Is it when officials respond to members, or is it when members reply to the request whether they feel they want to give it a yes or a no rating, which is the issue I have, but I'm not going to go into detail here. I just want to know, is it just the audit trail from when an officer replies to a member? Is that what you're recording here, rather than waiting for a member to get back to you and say, well, yes, no, or maybe aye, maybe no, which is what I usually often say.
Didn't realise Kenny Dalglish was in the council, but there you go. Bill?
Chair, thank you. Councillor Witts, I can confirm it's to the point, the timescale is to when the member ticks the button to say yes or no that they're satisfied. I would add, though, that one of the issues that we have had and are working hard is that quite often the response that a member gets isn't really what he wanted to know, and we're tending now to actually contact members to actually find out what it is that they really want to know. Quite often, and there is a particular member to the west who finds it very difficult to actually come to the point, and it's quite difficult sometimes to actually work out what that member actually wants to know. So our practice now is, wherever possible, to get in touch with the member to find out what they really want to know and how best the answer comes. I would say that sometimes the satisfaction rating is more to do with the member's unhappiness at the response they've got, rather than the speed of response or the quality of the information.
Come back, Alistair.
I have some sympathy for the member from the West, although I'm not quite sure who he is, but I have a fair idea. I think it's a blunt instrument. Sometimes you get a promise that something will be done, and if you sign it off and say, yes, that's fine, and then at your next surgery, an angry constituent comes to you and says, what about that thing you promised me would be done? So I think that gives members a certain wariness in being too quick to respond unless they get a clear steer that whatever the problem is going to be dealt with quickly. So I think maybe you may find I'm not alone in my anxiety in that respect.
Bill?
I think that's a very valid point. Unfortunately, whilst we're moving in the right direction, we still don't have the systems to be allowed to provide members or members of the public with the, shall we call it, the Amazon experience of letting you know exactly when things are going to happen. I realise I'm promising jam tomorrow, but I think we will get there in due course.
Of course, the difference is that members of the public pay their tax, Amazon, didn't he? Stephen, then Dennis and I.
Thank you. It's related to the ICT issue and just the EMS responses. I welcome the fact that mobile smart technology is now, I suppose, in place. But I imagine there'll be a lot of system updates still to happen, because I was to understand that by the end of May, the lagging system, which is linked to the EMES in the sense that that's the sort of operational sort of tool for recording work being carried out and issues, was to be set up so that it would now give a response, or at the end of May anyway, to members, so that when you got a lagging ticket number, you would actually get a response back saying when that piece of work had been closed or addressed. Now, I appreciate that's obviously taking a little longer than expected, but that closing of the loop has been, why are we having such a difficulty with that? Because this has been talked about loosely and with a bit more urgency over the last 3 years. So I'm just wondering, are we sure we're resourcing our part of the ICT element in terms of the system development, or is that other parts of the corporate beast?
Bill?
Thank you, Chair. Resourcing for ICT developments is both corporate and departmental. I think as a whole, this council does struggle at times with delivering on some of its more major projects. Having said which, the new fault reporting system that went live last month and the introduction of mobile working as it progresses will make an impact on that.
Stephen?
Thank you. So do we have an indication of when that closure, I mean, a response could be given to an EMES ticket, as it were, but once it's referred to lagging, if it's a roads issue or an operational issue, there's no closure on that on any system. So I think that's where there's a gap, and I'd appreciate sort of getting some indication of when that could be fed back, and then that could be maybe presented in an exception report as well.
The new fault reporting system, which went live last month, does now include direct links to lagging, and it does result in confirmation that an action has been undertaken. So that is in place now.
Yeah.
Brilliant, but it would be really helpful that, being the originator of the inquiry, if I could actually get, although the lagging system might close the case, the members not getting that feedback to say it's been done, which I think is kind of an essential part of the Amazon experience.
I will see what we can do to make sure that that actually happens. It shouldn't be that complex.
Ivor?
Yeah, it's going back to the EMES. One of the things I find difficult about it is when you put a request in and you get an answer, which is, I'll go and have a look at it, you can't really then say you've got the answer you want, because you don't know if they're going to actually do something about it. If it's, I'll go and have a look and I will give you a fuller answer in a week, then I would answer yes to that, because I'm getting an answer back. Whereas I'm going to have a look at it, I don't know what the outcome of that is. And that's maybe the wording when you're sending back a response. If you're just, if somebody comes and says, a bus shelter at Cullen was one I asked, can we paint it? And we'll go and have a look at it, because it wasn't one of our bus shelters, it's something the community's put in. Now, I'll go and have a look and come back. Then I know I can say, yes, you're dealing with it. But if you come back and say, no, well, I'm happy with that, that's a case of, that's the answer. I can send it straight away. But it's just this, I don't know what the outcome is, because, well, I'm going to have a look at something.
We'll certainly do our best to complete the circle on that one.
We'll go to the recommendations then. Members are asked to 2.1 review the overall summary of performance for DGFirst set out as Appendix 1. Review the overall summary of performance for the Department of Health and Safety Action Plan for the period 2014-15 as set out in Appendix 2. And 2.3, scrutinise the exception report in Appendix 3 and consider whether the actions proposed are adequate to improve performance and future monitoring of areas which have not met the target. and recognise the area of good practice, high performance where the target has been exceeded. And Bill's taken on those comments to close the loop for answers back to members. Yep. There's not any other business, but there's obviously an exception, another report coming in. But can we